Started.
I thank you for that, Shannon, and good afternoon, everybody. Very happy to see you all. Thanks for your patience and giving me the extra 5 minutes of grace to get on the call. Um, I am no stranger, I think, to many of you on the call. I've done roundtables with I think most of you in previous roles, but I'm excited to be here today in my new portfolio as the Associate Minister on Auto Theft and Bail Reform. And I think this is a top issue we've seen across the province, I believe, for your communities as well, each of the viewership and readership that you report to. And I know a lot of residents have had questions about what is the government doing about it. So my pledge to you is happy to be here on the first roundtable, but I want to make sure I'm accessible to each of you as well. I think you've seen a renewed focus from our government on the importance of cultural media, making sure that we're responsive, not only doing the roundtables, but making sure you have access to all kinds of Ontario ministers and MPPs as we roll out policies that affect your communities and affect your audiences. So this hopefully I'll be able to deliver some value and some information and that you can share with your audiences now. But you've got my commitment. This won't be the last time. As long as you want to hear from me, my job is to make sure that I'm communicating, and I know that's something Premier Ford has stipulated on the rest of the cabinet, and I want to make sure that we take that seriously. So I'm very personally committed to making sure you get the respect and the engagement that you deserve. Regarding the job itself, we've seen that there have been a rise in auto thefts and violent incidents and violent crime across a number of years. And while we have a strong track record that I'll get into a minute, I think it's important that we had focused attention from somebody elected to really tackle these problems. I view this in kind of three parts. One is making sure that the government sustains what we need, what we're doing well, and making sure that we continue to fund the programs that we know are working, the results that we've known have borne fruit. Number two, we've got to make sure that that I focus on making sure the government looks for opportunities on what we can do better, continuing to engage with the sector, with police forces, with residents, with all kinds of stakeholders to make sure we're learning the lessons that we have to make sure that we can be the best justice-focused Ontario government that we can be. And three is the advocacy that we need to see in Ontario, where we know that our federal government is missing the mark on criminal justice reforms. And I'll speak about all three of those in their time. Number one, really, there's a lot of actions that the government's taken to date that have been making a positive impact. Before Doug Ford was elected, we used to recruit about 1,444 police constables in Ontario every year. Under his leadership and under the leadership of the Solicitor General, Michael Kersner, we've seen that number increase to 2,000. So we're able to recruit more police, get boots on the ground into communities, but we know that our communities are rapidly growing, particularly in the GTHA, but in other major municipalities as well. So we're going to continue, you're going to see us continue to make sure that we are building capacity at the Ontario Police College. We're getting boots on the ground and police in your neighborhoods to make sure that your residents are safe. We've also been very focused on increasing Ontario's investigation capacity through programs like the CISO, the Criminal Intelligence Service Ontario, through programs like the Preventing Auto Theft Grant, through some of the joint task force that you've seen, our carjacking task force, where we are enabling information sharing and facilitating that sharing of information and intelligence amongst our police services here at home, but then also with partners like the CBSA, like partners with that we see in America and others. We've been investing in that heavily. We've also been investing in giving tools and resources to those police, helicopters, automatic license plate readers, amongst others, to make sure that police have the tools, not just that we have the boots on the ground, but that those police have the tools and the equipment that they need to do their job effectively. What we're going to continue to look at is how is that working, and the opportunity for Ontario to engage more to make sure that we are the investments that we're making in law enforcement are being effective. We've made an investment. You'll see the results of this coming soon, where we put the money aside to appoint 25 new provincial judges. to make sure that we are processing cases in a timely manner, that we're able to have our justice system meet the demands of our growing community, and particularly looking at high demand areas. Along with that 25 judicial appointments that we're making, we're also going to be appointing or hiring 190 more additional court staff. So these are people like crown attorneys, these are note takers, these are all the admin staff that are vital to having a functioning and thriving justice system. We often think of tough on crime as just being boots on the ground, law enforcement, getting police in our communities, and we're doing that. But we also need to be tough on crime when it comes to holding offenders accountable and making sure that justice is served in a reasonable, timely manner. So we're focusing on that, and you're going to continue to see improvements from the Ontario government as we roll that plan forward. The third item about advocacy for the federal government, I mean, it's no stranger to a lot of your listeners that our current bail legislation is not hitting the mark. In 2019, the federal government passed a bill, Bill C-75, which really started this catch and release process that we've started to see in our bail system, and putting the comfort, frankly, of the suspected criminal ahead of the community and the neighborhood that we're supposed to be protecting, that we have to protect those residents from these offenders. They made some positive moves at the start of this year with Bill C-48, where they expanded some of the reverse onuses. We're grateful for the collaboration with our federal partners, but we need to see more action taken. The mess that we've seen in our bail system, which really started with that Bill C-75, that revolving door justice, stems from a very ideology about putting the needs of criminals and suspected criminals ahead of the residents in our neighborhood who need to feel safe. So we need strong action on that. We also need action, stiffer controls at our borders. We know about 85% of guns that are on our streets in the GTA come over the American border. We need stronger border control there. And we also need stronger controls at the Port of Montreal and at the CN intermodals in Brampton and Vaughan. So these are files that we continue to work with them on. But rest assured, while we need action from other levels of government, we are taking strong action ourselves. And as I mentioned in the first 2 points, there are things we've done very well already, and there are things that we need to continue to do. So you'll continue to hear from me. As I said, I want to make sure that I'm accessible to not only to yourselves on the call, but also accessible to your audiences. This is a high priority for Premier Ford to make sure we're treating every media outlet with the respect that they deserve. So you will happy to answer any questions today. I'm looking forward to questions. I know we submitted a few that are good, that I think are very valid and necessary questions to answer. So looking forward to answering those questions and continuing to report back on our progress as we tackle this challenge together. And thank you very much for your interest and for being here.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Minister. So first I'm going to go to Sarah with VIP 51.
Thanks, Shannon. Hello, Minister.
Hi,
So
Sarah.
my question is about those auto theft and violent carjackings, and those cases continue happening in our neighborhood and streets, and it's happened for months, and the people are calling for a change. But it seems the trend is still rising, or we continue to see those cases happen in our community. So what do you think is the main cause, and how can the government to help the resident feel safe? Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And it's a question that we hear a lot, and frankly, part of the reason why my position was created to make sure that we continue our progress and really get a handle on this file. We've seen some good trends. There was an Equite report, car theft as a whole being down about 14% across Ontario in June. Still way too high. And if you look at the total of the last 3 years, you compare that to, you pick 3 years anytime in the 2010s, it's nowhere near getting low enough. We've got a lot of work to do. We really need to crack down on these, frankly, these scumbags that are stealing cars in our neighborhoods, and we're going to continue to. It's a good trend. We've got more to do. The troubling trend that really bothers our government, that really I find to be a high priority, an even higher priority, is the rise that we've seen, an almost doubling in the violent auto theft. So there's kind of two ways to steal a car. You can steal a car in the middle of the night, while people are asleep. But there's a second kind of auto theft where you have these violent criminals approaching people at intersections, putting a gun to their head, saying, "Give me the keys to your car," right? And incidents that we've seen across the GTA, including in my own community in Brampton, where we have these violent home invasions, where you have these armed thugs kicking down the door with a gun, waking people up sometimes in the middle of the night, "Give me the keys to your car." And that has doubled across most of the GTA from this year to last year. We're taking a few actions in order to combat that. We've continued to expand the Criminal Intelligence Service Ontario and our provincial grants to have that investigative capacity. We've seen good results out of that. I'll point to an example that we just saw in Halton Region, Project Catfish, where they were able to arrest several individuals, took 12 guns off the street, and that was enabled by the Criminal Intelligence Service Ontario, our provincial program with intelligence sharing. What we need to make sure are that those offenders face justice and that they're not out on our streets again to commit more crime. And there are pieces of that we're working on here as a province to make sure that we do. But obviously advocacy that we need from our federal government as well, which I alluded to in my answer earlier. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
All right, so thanks. I'm going to go to Nitin with Prime Asia.
Thank you, Shannon. Sorry. Good afternoon, Graham. Thank you for this this roundtable. My question is because many times we asked Premier Ford also the same thing about the criminal code, changes in the criminal code, and this is kind of a passing the buck, because when we talk to the federal ministers, we talk to the Justice Minister, we talk to the Honorable Anita Anand, and very categorically quoted, they said, we have laws in place and it's up to the province. When we talk to the police chief, they said, we need changes in the criminal code. The chair of the Peel region, Mr. Nando, said there is a disconnect. When we talk to the province, they said it's a federal ball that they have to step up to make the changes in the criminal code. We want to understand, the Canadians, the Ontarians want to understand whose responsibility is this. Where is the disconnect between the federal and the provincial government, and what to do so that the federal government, if they need to change make changes in the criminal code, what they have to do, why they are passing the bucks to the province, and why province is passing the buck to the federal. Where is the disconnect? And Justice Minister, his own vehicle was stolen 3 times, and he said that we did amendment 2 times last year and this year, and that's good enough. Now it's a province who has to bring tough judges and all those things. So can you explain, please?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I've heard this from the Liberal federal government as well, where they say, well, we passed Bill C-48, the problem solved. What are you talking about? And I think that really falls flat for a lot of residents. When the federal government changed Bill C-75, they implemented legal principles that basically the comfort of the suspected offender trumps other considerations. And they've really allowed this revolving door catch and release system that we see with the bail system. We believe that the criminal code should reflect the needs of neighborhoods, the needs of residents, the needs of everyday people who want to feel safe in their own community. And we shouldn't be having a rubric where judges and justice of the peace have to consider, the least restrictive form of bail anytime they make a ruling on whether somebody will be detained or whether somebody will be out into community again. Bill C-48 brought it back a little bit, and we're grateful for some of the reverse onus changes that they made. But it has nowhere near solved the problem that was started with Bill C-75 when that was passed in 2019. I want to be very clear on that. What I want to make sure that we do in Ontario, and what I'm committed to doing as well, it's not just about advocating to the federal government and telling them what we need. We need criminal code changes. I've said it. Police chiefs have said it. The Premier has said it. We all know this. But what do we do if the federal government is unwilling to act? So what we've been doing is making sure that we beef up our own internal system with the justice system, hiring 25 more judges, making sure that we're appointing tough on crime judges that'll prioritize public safety, that we feel will prioritize public safety, and also complementing them with the court staff, the 190 court staff. So you see that continue to roll out to make sure that we have capacity in our system to, like, if we can't get better criminal code rules on bail, at least if we can process cases quicker, then you'll have people out on bail for less time, right? So we're looking at that. We also launched $112 million bail grant to police services to help them monitor some of these offenders that are suspected offenders that are out while they're out in community, to make sure that we're able to keep community as safe as possible. But the fact is, the status quo that we've seen, our provincial carjacking task force that laid 124 arrests earlier last year, half of them were out on bail when we arrested these people. The status quo isn't working. We need criminal code changes. This is a problem the federal government could solve quickly if they wanted to. But rest assured, we're taking the action on our side in Ontario, in the absence of federal leadership on this issue, to make sure that we keep offenders and keep communities safe and hold offenders accountable.
Quick follow-up. As you mentioned in your opening remarks about the invasions, midnight armed robberies, and you got a very important and very crucial this portfolio. How can you make sure that if criminals have their rights, and when the armed robberies happen, why don't the homeowners, the residents who are being robbed midnight, they get their rights to defend themselves? What you can do while you being in this portfolio? Thank you.
Yeah, the power on the provincial side is to make sure that we have the law enforcement capabilities, the best law enforcement capabilities that we possibly can. So what our priority is making sure that we have enough police in our neighborhoods. They have enough resources in terms of equipment to do their jobs, but they also have the resources in terms of intelligence to do their jobs. And they have a justice system that is reactive and responsive and able to make sure that when police lay charges and lay arrests, that those offenders are held to justice in a quick, efficient manner. We can't have scenarios that we've seen where you have the same offenders out 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times out committing the same crime time and time again. So we are committed to doing our part. We've done our part, but we're continuously looking at opportunities to improve how we engage with this system from a provincial perspective. So we want to make sure that neighborhoods are safe, and we can get there. Canada, despite what we see in the news, Canada is a safe country. It used to be safer, and we can get there again. And we see some good trends. Again, some of the auto theft numbers that I've talked about, we're seeing some increased trends on the home invasions, et cetera. Our party and Doug Ford and our government are committed to doing everything we can to bring safety back for Ontario residents.
All right. Thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Lynn at 1059.
Thank you, Shannon. Good afternoon, Minister.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi. My question is, as you mentioned, we know the Ontario government has taken some measures to combat auto theft. And we also learned the federal government announced the tougher bail policies in January. But we have not seen significant changes. So the residents are wondering, why do car theft and robberies or carjacking continue to occur so frequently? Thank you.
Thanks. And I want to clarify one point. The federal government brought a bill this year, C-48, which is better than it was in 2019, but still didn't solve the problem that the federal government caused with Bill C-75 when they passed that in 2019, which really brought these catch and release policies and imposed them on judges, justice of the peace, and our entire justice system. So I want to be clear on that. What we need to make sure that we're doing, criminals are getting smarter. Auto theft and these violent crimes, we see them happening as a matter of organized crime. And even the violent carjackings and the home invasions, it still seems to be what we hear from police, still seems to be generally individuals who are kind of at the low level, who are stealing these cars, and then as a part of a larger criminal organization. So we need to do a few things to make sure that that crime is less lucrative. What we've done on the provincial side, we've rolled out automatic license plate readers for police services. These are cameras that go on the top of police cars that can ding a license plate right away. So if there's something wonky in the paperwork, if it's a license plate that belongs to a different vehicle, etc., rather than having a police officer type it in the computer, they're able to have that happen automatically due to these cameras that go on the top of police cars. And we've seen those rolled out in many police services across Ontario to help with enforcement. We're also going to be rolling out dedicated helicopter units for GTA police services. When you have particularly these violent incidents, these violent carjackings, where somebody puts a gun to somebody's head and steals their car, getting air support up in the air in seconds or minutes, rather than waiting hours, can make all the difference in apprehending those kinds of suspects. And those helicopters can avoid some of the high-speed car chases that we've also seen happening from police in the GTA as well. What we need to see more of from the federal government, and we continue to work with them collaboratively. Again, it's not just, I don't want to just hand the federal government. We are working with them. We are, advocating for Ontario almost daily through our ministries to try to get some of these changes. We need to see dedicated backscatter scanners at the CN rail intermodals at Brampton and at Vaughan. What these scanners will allow us to do is scan shipping containers that are on trains that these thieves put them onto they put them on the train at Brampton or Vaughan. The train goes up to the Port of Montreal, they get on a boat, and they're off in a foreign country to be sold. If we can start catching more of these vehicles at our rail yards, we will make crime less lucrative for the organized crime, for the criminal organizations, part of me, that are engaging in this. And then we will see a further decline in auto theft. We've seen some success already with projects like Project Odyssey being one in Peel Region. Hundreds of cars that were found. Right now, we find about half of cars that are stolen. We need to increase that number, and the less lucrative this is for these scumbags that are running these criminal organizations, the less theft we will see in our neighborhoods, and the safer our streets will be.
Thank you so much.
All
Thank you.
right. Thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Manon with the road today.
Thank you, Shannon, and good afternoon, Minister. Happy to join this roundtable, and congratulations on your new assignment. Good to see our local MPP sitting on the cabinet table. Moving ahead, my question is related to a lot of law enforcement agencies, our police forces. Whenever they come out with success stories, they bring out big news releases, and at the same time, there is a lot of disinformation, misinformation happening in the communities at large. Because what we have seen and observed is, Minister, that there is a lot of inconsistency in those news releases. For example, I'll give you a quick example from yesterday. Halton Police had an Operation Ninja done, and they mentioned Algerian nationals. As and when Peel Police does any news release, they don't even mention the immigration status of those offenders, which causes a lot of discontent and a lot of misinformation. Many communities are tagged unknowingly, for no excuse of their, for no criminal intent of theirs. So would you, especially looking at your new portfolio, would you try to bring in some consistency in these announcements, so that wherever there is a loose end, they can try to fill in the gap, whether it's our immigration system being misused or there is less security vetting of these criminals? There needs to be a full stop to these criminal activities. Thank you.
I appreciate that question, and I won't comment on the specifics of how they've released specific projects, but I'll answer the question generally, and I hope that I hope I'll be able to give you a straight answer that way. bringing certainty and consistency to how police services report crime data is something that our government is looking at. We need to be able to measure the problem properly in order to address the problem properly. And what you see in have a case like the GTHA where you could drive from Halton to Durham, right? And you're crossing that on the 407 that can take an hour sometimes, probably a little bit longer. 401 and traffic takes a long time, but still, you're during that time you're going through Halton, Peel, Toronto, York, Durham. There's 5 different police services that enforce the law in a relatively small area, and these are all big. Like these are big, serious police services, and they all follow along with provincial legislation that's laid out. But obviously there are differences, and we don't want to stop. We want to make sure we're encouraging police services to best police their neighborhoods and the local nuances. Local chiefs know best how to police their own jurisdictions, and we certainly don't want to remove any decision-making authority that they have. But we do need to do a better job of collecting data on this. This is something that I have tasked our ministry officials with, and something I look forward to reporting back on.
Well, thank you, and we look forward to some, moving ahead on this file. And I do have a follow, but I'll leave my chance to the end if there is time available.
Okay.
Sure. Well, Shannon, let's make sure Mr. Gupta is a Brampton North resident, so I would never suggest that we should give him extra treatment, but let's. I have to answer his questions at the grocery store anyway, so I'd better answer them here.
Okay, so we'll go. I have a couple more, and then if we have time, we'll come back. But let's go to Bill with Greca TV.
Thank you, Shannon. Good luck to your new duties, Minister. I have 2 questions. The first one is with respect to car thefts. We saw some great success in the recent days in Halton in being able to bust that group of criminals that were altering the VIN number of the cars that they're trying to ship out of the country. Now, for years, the province had difficulty getting search warrants at the ports of Montreal to check what kind of cars are being exported, especially in the former Soviet Union countries or some African countries. But now we see that they've been so sophisticated now because of the huge amounts of money and profit that they make. They're trying to alter the VIN numbers or file them away. Perhaps you may want to look into the area that no port should accept for shipment any cars unless they're accompanied by an official ownership issued by the Ontario Ministry of Transportation. In other words, they may be able to steal a car, but not necessarily they know the owner, or even if they doctor a phony, a bogus ownership, if it's not certified by the Ontario Ministry, then they should not be allowed to be loaded in the ports. You may want to look in that possibility about the car thefts, but certainly what the province is trying to do is, especially to appoint an associate minister for this concern of great concern to society, is very commendable. So my question about bail reform, and that's where there are some difficulties. I know that the initiative of the province to increase the staff in the bail courts or generally in the justice system will go a long way in terms of expediting bails, because according to our charter, if they're delayed, you have no choice but to release any accused person. So there's one part that has to be taken, and certainly appointing more staff and more specialized crowns in this area, because a lot of the bails are being recommended for release by crowns because they are restricted by the criminal code. So I think it should be clear that while the province is trying to do something on its part, a lot of it depends on the federal government. Sure, C-48 came a long way, but that takes care only of those repeat breakers of the bail terms. The reverse onus, the burden of proof switches to them, and that was needed, very much needed. But however, many of the bails are necessitated, as you said, the revolving door. It's according to the Justice's Youth Act, which is, again, it's a federal jurisdiction law. And there, you can hardly detain someone, and many of the senior criminals are hiring youth to do their job because they're not going to go to jail for a long time. So there you depend again, on the federal government for these reforms, and I can understand this is a very difficult issue. Now, in terms of my last point, yes, yeah, I posed a question about this, but my last point is that appointing judges that often, even for detention orders by the judge of the peace bench, the Superior Court judges release them. And of course, they're appointed by the federal government. So what do you intend to do to coordinate all these concerns that I mentioned?
Appreciate that. I'll try to take them in order. The one point that you brought about VIN fraud is something that I've been tasked with in the 3.5 weeks that I've been since I've been appointed. We know about 80% of cars that are stolen are shipped off overseas, and the reason for that, a lot of these countries that they go to, they can get 1.5 times the value for selling the car, and it's easier to unload, and they seem to be effective at doing that. But that also means 20% are staying domestic, right? And we're not. That's well, 20% is not the majority. That's a significant percentage that we need to address. We've been undertaking internal reviews in the government to make sure that our own processes are clean and efficient and properly are a proper barrier to make sure that this won't happen, to make sure that we have ways of finding the people who try this and holding them accountable. I can't get into some of the specific operational details of how we do that because, quite frankly, I want these scumbags getting caught like anybody else, and I wouldn't want to tip them off. But it is something that we're working on. It's something we're looking at quite seriously. Regarding bail reform, you're quite right. I, as a provincial minister, cannot tell a judge what to do. The federal government, federal politicians can't tell a judge what to do, but they do write the rubric that does tell judges how to make their decisions. And that does fall under the criminal code, that does fall under federal jurisdiction. So we continue to advocate, not just in public, but directly government to government as well, to bring meaningful bail reform and also tough penalties and tougher penalties on the criminal code as well. You've seen some letters put out through Premier Ford and all the premiers across Ontario asking for bail reform and follow-up. We followed that up this summer as well, talking about bail reform, but also talking about stiffer penalties for violent crime. So it's something we continue to advocate for. But while we advocate, we need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can do in Ontario as well. And that's, making sure we have effective bail monitoring through all the money that we've put in for police services to do that. Different technology, the bail dashboard and other, which I'm happy to get into in a future answer, that I think are helping and will make a difference and make our community safer, again, in the absence of federal leadership in amending the criminal code.
All right, thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Jagdish with Punjabi Post. Oh, you just need to unmute there.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Graham, for this meeting, which was much needed. So I had the same question that everyone else have, and I'm going to repeat them again and need a little bit more clarity on it. My more concern is that as our local MP from Brampton East, he's going in the park, he's good, making some videos, he's releasing some statements, mentioning these three issues that he's openly talking in the gatherings wherever he says the provincial responsibility. The first thing is the bail reform. You have already talked a little bit about it, but I need a more clarity. Where is the catch? You talked about the C-48. He's talking about the C-48, that we have done enough in the C-48. It's the only province they hire the judges. They don't go by the C-48. They don't keep them behind the jails. Then he come to the jails. He said Ontario doesn't have enough jail where they can keep him. So he said Ontario has a problem with the jails. Ontario has a problem with catching them and keeping them in jail. And then the third thing, he raised the issue about the judges there, that the Ontario government hired the judges, which is very liberal to it. They're very soft on the criminals. So these are the three main issues, and I just want a little clarification on it. Where is the actual catch? You said C-48 is not enough. They are saying that we did bring the C-48, right? You talked about the C-5, you talked about the C-75. They're talking about the same bills, that what you're talking. But where is the catch? What is the clear message that we can give to the public? No, this is the federal. No, this is the province.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And I've heard from Liberal MPs in the government where they tell Bill C-48 and they say, look, we solved the problem, everything's good, right? What's Ontario's problem? Which you have to shake your head when you see that. I mean, how far they swung us to the left with Bill C-75, Bill C-48, again, I'm happy, better to have it than not, but it has come nowhere near solving the massive gap that they've laid when it comes to provincial judges, right? I can't tell a judge what to do. Liberal politicians, federal politicians can't tell a judge what to do, but they do write the rubric on how judges make their decisions, and those decisions are made in accordance with the criminal code. We need to see public safety and the safety of our neighborhoods put as the principal reason, the principal consideration when judges and JPs are making this decision. And I heard similar arguments about our jail capacity. Look, the Ontario government legally in our correctional system, if a judge orders somebody to be on remand, to be detained, we legally cannot turn that person away. There's no case of the Ontario jail saying, sorry, we're at capacity, you can't come. While we are building more capacity and we need to make sure that we have capacity, if a judge orders somebody to be there, the Ontario jail will find the space. We will find the space for them to be. We had one case of a judge, and I'd say a rogue judge, making a determination about jail capacity being a reason why somebody wasn't granted bail. One case in Ontario. And that isn't in the rubric. Jail capacity is not a consideration. It's not a listed consideration for how judges and JPs should be making these determinations. But we had one case of that happening earlier this year in the spring. How do you explain the thousands of other people that are getting a slap on the wrist when they're getting caught 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times? You have Crown attorneys scratching their heads. You have police scratching their heads. You have judges and JPs that their hands are bound by the lax criminal code that forces them to put these people out and let these people back into our neighborhoods. We need more action on bail reform. We need the federal government to step up. We're doing our part in Ontario. There's a lot of good work we've done already. We're continuing to look at how we can do better on this. But I'll give you an example in our own Peel region, Project Warlock. 18 individuals that were arrested for violent carjackings, home invasions. Somebody was woken up with a gun pointed to their head. Police bust them. They make 18 arrests, lay 150 criminal code charges. 9 of those 18 people were out on bail by the time we were doing the announcement. The status quo is not working. So while we appreciate the steps the Liberal government has made, bringing us with Bill C-48, they've nowhere near gotten to where they need to be for the mess that they made with Bill C-75. And we expect them to do better. Our government is going to continue to advocate for them to do better. And frankly, our residents in Peel Region and all across Ontario need them to do better.
All right.
Just
Thank
a
you.
follow-up, quick follow-up, please.
That'll be very quick. I still have two more questions I
Sure.
need to get to.
Just quick follow-up on this one. What I see in C-48, there's no minimum mandatory punishment. That was there before, but I think somehow it got removed. So do you agree that there gotta be a minimum mandatory punishment for the repeat offenders?
We need stronger penalties for sure. And I want the federal government to come with a plan. The criminal code is under federal jurisdiction. They need to come with a plan that actually works for Ontario and works to keep us safe. What I can say, before the Liberal government was elected federally, the criminal code was a lot more in favor of public safety and keeping our neighborhoods and communities safe. Since they have made amendments and changes and passed bills to change it, we have seen that decrease in our communities. I will do everything I can. Premier Ford will do everything he can. Our government will do everything we can in partnership with our police services to keep communities safe. We need change on the criminal code. We need meaningful bail reform from this government.
All right. So next I have Logan with Dan.
Yes, good afternoon, Minister. Thank you, Shannon. Minister, I do regret to share with you that I am also a victim. The car theft, and fortunately, I got the car back a couple of months. So I have to thank the enforcement officer.
Which Logan, which service was that?
It's Toronto Police.
Great job.
Yeah, I live in Scarborough. Minister, I don't want to waste the time, and I don't want to elaborate anything. I have the same views what my media colleagues they just shared with you. But I will tell you, I have heard from our premier, your premier. He has no confidence in the justice system. He said a couple of times, I don't trust this justice system. You know, I met a couple of police officers regarding, and I talked to them regarding this particular issue. Most of them are not very happy. Even they don't trust the system. They said, most of the people, I don't want to come up with this here in front of the minister, but, you know, they said the criminal lawyers are creating issues in the province, criminal lawyers. So that's all I say, because your premier has no confidence. So it shows that it is a difficult task for you. It's very dangerous to the officers. So I like to hear from you. Thank you.
I just want to clarify the question.
The question is because there's something to be done with the justice system. Many changes by law. Yeah. Is it possible? Is it possible? That's my question.
It is, right? We have been a safer society in the past than we are today, and we can get there again. And there's work that we need to do at the provincial government. There's a lot of work the federal government needs to do. I talked about bail reform in the criminal code, but we also need backscatter scanners, dedicated new scanners at the Brampton and Vaughan rail yards. We also need stiffer border controls to stop the spread of guns coming in from the United States. You know, 85% of guns that are found in violent interactions are coming over the borders from the United States. We need action from them on this front. But what I'm here to do, and what our government is here to do, is continue the progress we've made, getting boots on the ground with police, giving them the tools in terms of equipment and resource sharing so that we continue to see big wins like we've seen, hundreds of guns taken off the streets this summer. Many of those investigations, most of them supported by provincial dollars. And you're going to continue to see us put resources into our justice system with hiring more judges and more court staff, and expanding court capacity. You know, in my community in Brampton, we saw the W.G. Davis courthouse, right? A 30% increase in capacity, getting the job done. We don't want to be in a position where we continue to deal with some of these problems, some of these challenges. So we're doing what we can do as a province, and I don't want to say the job's done because we know that there's more we need to do. We're going to continue to learn. We're going to continue to innovate. We're going to continue to work with our police leadership and our justice leadership to make sure that Ontario has the best, most responsive, most efficient criminal justice system possible. But we need action from the federal government. And the last point I'll make on that federal government point, you know, we've heard them say they lay it at the feet of Ontario. If this was an Ontario problem, why are we hearing the same thing from our colleagues in British Columbia? Why is the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, calling for the same thing? Why is the Premier of Manitoba calling for the same thing? Why are we hearing from premiers on the East Coast, maritime premiers, calling for meaningful criminal code reform on bail and also on sentencing? We need action out of them. I think all of you here today can help, and your audiences can help by continuing to advocate and continuing to let our government know what more we can do, whether it's the justice system, police, law enforcement, etc. We are a government that listens to the public. Premier Ford is the most accessible premier we've had in history. We want to hear from the public. We want to hear from you. And give us good ideas, and we'll implement them to the best of our ability. We've done a lot. We know there's more that needs to be done. And I look forward to continuing to report back to the folks on this call as our government takes on that work and continues to get it done for your audiences and for all the people in Ontario. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have two more questions. We'll try and get through them. We'll have Khaled with My Second Home TV.
Thank you, Shannon. Minister, now let's assume that the feds are enabling criminals by refusing not to change the criminal code. So you have boots on the ground and you have the technology, but why don't you coordinate with other jurisdictions so that you can trump whatever authorities, especially when it comes to finding and stopping the stolen item just before it leaves? Because many times, and maybe you mentioned that before, that authorities, both authorities and clients, they do know where exactly their car is and which carriage, even at the the port or even on the train, but their hands are tied. How can you bypass this, and why don't you think about that so far? Thank you.
I would respectfully say this is something that we're thinking about constantly, and something we're working on constantly is a coordination. You know, what I spoke about earlier with, think of all the police services that you would interact with, just driving from Halton or Hamilton to Durham, and it doesn't take that long. But then also when you look at where we need law enforcement to be able to take action at the rail yards that we're talking about in Brampton and Vaughan. We also have to interact with the CBSA in that same place, right? When you have interprovincial organizations, we've got to interact with them as well. So we've taken a lot of great steps, this is something I got to commend. This is something I will commend the federal government on, working with us to allow that intelligence sharing and allow that coordination and allow that work to happen quicker. We're not where we need to be. We continue to advocate. We have we call them the federal, provincial, territorial ministers meeting that'll be happening in October in Yellowknife. this year, where we're going to continue to work on these. Every single one of these meetings, I think we take good steps. We get good direction, collaborating with other provinces, collaborating with the federal government, and this is something that I think you will continue to see progress happening, and coordination happening, so that we're able to be the most responsive and keep communities safe to the best of our ability.
Thank you.
All right, so
Thank you.
this will be our last question, and then we can wrap up for the afternoon. I'm going to go to Taryn at Red FM.
Thank you so much for the time. And my question is, we all talking about the bail system, the bail reform, and it is the need of the time. But a majority of these groups are indulging teens into the auto theft. And we all know that how the juvenile system works. So what is your instance? What is your government thinking about this thing, as the number of teens that are being indulged in this auto theft crime, it's increasing day by day.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head about the fact that these criminal organizations are targeting vulnerable people to get them to go out and do the crime. It's not the bosses that are sitting counting, millions of dollars of illegal cash from stealing cars and selling drugs and all these other activities, that are out stealing the cars. It's vulnerable people who they target and they get to commit these crimes. And what scumbags they are to be going after our youth, Canadian youth, and newcomers, to get them to this kind of lifestyle. What kind of scumbag you have to be in order to do that? What we're focused on is doing what we can to keep cars safe, frankly, at time of the activity, but also cracking into some of these criminal organizations. That's why our investments in programs like the Criminal Intelligence Service Ontario is so important. That's why these the joint carjacking task force that we put together, that's why that's so important. That's why enabling information sharing, the provincial auto theft grant, the dedicated prosecution teams, that's why those are so important, so that we're able to really crack into these organized elements, hit them where it hurts, and make this crime a lot less lucrative, which we should, by making it less lucrative, we should see substantial change coming forward.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And with that, I'm just going to pass it right over to the minister if you have any few final words, and otherwise we will wrap up.
Oh, well, hopefully you're not tired of hearing me talk by now. But these are big topics that we spoke about. My job now is to put very focused attention on these issues, supporting our Solicitor General, supporting our Attorney General, and supporting our Premier, and supporting our law enforcement. So you'll see us continue to do things that we're doing well, and the work that we're doing that's keeping our community safe to the best of our ability. But we are also actively looking for good ideas and good process and innovative ways that we can do a better job. The biggest thing that your audiences can know if they're asking how can we help or how can we make this, is look at when they're looking at their municipal, their provincial, their federal politicians, to look at candidates that are supportive of law enforcement and supportive of the rule of law. I didn't get into this in my answers, but when you look at the NDP or the Liberal Party in Ontario, these are two parties that every time that we've made an investment in the Criminal Intelligence Service, or we've made an investment in helicopters, sometimes they outright mock it. Many times they call us misguided and say that we should be spending money somewhere else. Imagine we didn't beef up the CISO the way that we did for Project Warlock or Project Chrome in Peel, where 71 guns were taken off the streets of Peel region, 4 assault-style rifles, 67 handguns. Enough fentanyl was seized to cause 750,000 overdoses. If we listen to these defund the police politicians that don't think we should be supporting the investigative capacity, don't think we should be investing in police, those drugs and those guns that we talked about would still be on the street. And there are hundreds of guns we've taken off the street across Ontario through investments that we've delivered for our police services, frankly, the police services and the frontline police are heroes for the work that they're doing. And so are our Crown attorneys, and so are the folks that interact in the justice system. Everybody is working together to make Ontario as safe as we possibly can. We're going to continue to work with them and work with our partners to capitalize on the programs that are doing well and double down on those. And we're going to continue to look for innovative ways to do this better, and always with service to the public as our core tenet of how we engage. So if you want to hear from me again in the next coming weeks and months, let Shannon know. Happy to do this again and report back. Don't just take my word for it today. Measure what we're going to be doing in the coming weeks and months. I've been on the job just under a month now, and I intend to continue to do all I can to keep your community safe and keep cars in driveways where they belong, not on shipping crates sailing off to Africa and Europe. So, so my pleasure to be here. I will be here again as much as you want me to be, and just appreciate everybody's time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and just stay safe out there. And thank you for what you do for our communities by keeping them informed.
All right, thank you, Minister. Everybody, I will send you the recording once it's loaded.
Okay, thank you, Shannon.
Have a good day.
You
Beautiful.
too.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Governor.
Bye.